Ian, welcome to the Exchange Wire Kitchen.
Thank you.
Lovely to have you here in person as well. My first question for you is, what's your coffee choice?
So today I've gone with the flat white.
Why are you a common flat white man?
I do often have them because it's a little bit stronger than a cappuccino, but it's not too intense like a espresso or something like that. So
that's a good shout.
It's a balance between good and evil,
I like that. I like that a lot. And I've gone for a decaf cappuccino.
Oh.
A, don't drink caffeine. I realise there is a slight amount of caffeine in decaf. But B, cappuccino, I can't spill it. I'm really clumsy, and anything that's more liquidy goes everywhere.
No, we're not going to have that.
No, exactly. So yeah, I'm trying to be safe. I've already spilt very liquid over myself today,
so good start.
Yeah, it's a really good day. But thank you so much for coming in. So first of all, obviously you are Exec Director of IAB MENA, and I'd love to understand a bit more about what that looks like, what your role entails.
Yeah, so as you say, I look after the MENA region for the IAB, and we started during COVID. So we're well versed in the land of challenges, let's say.
Absolutely.
And it had been a long time in the making. So for many, many years, there was a feeling in the industry that there was a need to come together, work together, and help the market grow. But it took a long time to get going. We finally got going just before COVID, one board meeting in, and we all went our separate ways. But actually, it had some positives. We were able to spend more time really thinking about what we wanted to do. And how we wanted to do it, so sort of forced homework, shall we say? So that worked really well, actually, as it turned out. And so it's only been going for a couple of years. We've made significant strides in getting the industry talking to itself, talking to each other, understanding the benefit of working together on certain initiatives, understanding the role of competitiveness versus collaboration. So it's been an interesting journey, shall we say, but very rewarding as well.
I'm sure, and obviously it's a very interesting region. What for you, kind of in the short time that IAB MENA has been running, kind of what for you have been the key takeouts, the key learnings of how the region operates and how that's also evolved over the past few years as well?
Just having some of that
little sip, absolutely,
yeah, exactly,
fuel yourself up.
Yeah, it's the trick to buy time to answer the question. So I think one of the challenges that we had from day one was actually, although there's lots of information about the region, there's not a lot of consistent and reliable information about the region. So we really started at the basics to talk about, can we at least align behind some facts? And so we started with ad spend. Yeah. Because it's one most people are interested in. Yeah. And the first work we did in this space really highlighted the need to work together on it, which was a great catalyst for getting people together, because the variation between estimates of the size of the market was so great, depending on where in the market you sat. And it was really eye-opening for people to realise how much of the market they were missing. So very often agencies had not seen the SMB space. If you're in social media, you don't see the programmatic space and vice versa and so on. So there was a real sort of sense of, bringing together some knowledge to say, right, here's a starting point in which we know to be true, so much as these things can be true, of course, and then we can argue about that. So step one was very, very foundational in that sense. And one of the things that came out to it was a huge surprise, actually particularly outside the region, of the scale of the market. So in 2024, we estimated the market of digital advertising just under $7 billion. So, okay, in the UK context, maybe that's not a lot, but actually in a European context, that's a top 5 market.
That's massive.
Okay, it's a region, but really it's 2 big markets within that region that account for the majority of that spend. So that was really eye-opening for people. I think it helped people realise the scale of the market. It wasn't just a growth market. It's not an emerging market from a spend point of view, but it's an emerging market from an opportunity point of view. So significant levels of growth, between 15 and 20% most years, but with actually quite a big base. So actually a really exciting market that needs to be taken more seriously, proper investment, proper resources, proper talent, etc. So it was a real catalyst for getting the market to take stock and go, okay, actually this is quite serious. You can't just fly in and pretend that you're going to get business. No. Which is a mistake I think a lot of companies make.
Interesting. And so what for you are you seeing that kind of, I suppose from a format perspective, from a measurement perspective, kind of it feels like that what was lacking in the industry, in the region for a long time was benchmarks, understanding exactly, who's doing what and how well they're doing it and kind of how can I compete, how can I go alongside them. What are you seeing that's working really well in that regard and kind of where is there still a lot of opportunity for growth and for change?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think the market is quite dominated by video. It actually always has been, whether it was TV before and then obviously online video beyond. So I think it's very, very video-led market. And I think it's also a very social-led market.
Right.
So the vast majority of spend goes behind the social channels. And obviously, add social and video together, you've got...
That's everything.
It's everything, right?
The entire ecosystem.
So on the one hand, I think that's really positive for the market because it is quite forward-looking. I think a lot of other markets are following that model now with more in social video in particular. But actually what it's meant is perhaps less focus on the real opportunities in the market around programmatic, open internet, new channels like CTV, for example, retail media, all the things you talk about in most other markets. So I think that dominance has held back some other channels, maybe not on purpose, but just by the very nature of actually social media works really well.
Yeah.
So you don't need to do anything else. And I think that's also one of the challenges in a fast-growing market is how sophisticated do you need to be if you're growing anyway?
That's a good question. And so what's the answer? The people with the budgets out there, do the brand agency, do they realise that that they should be looking into new areas, looking into new opportunities of growth, of innovation? Or actually, is it a case of, if it ain't, as you say, we're growing anyway, so why do we need to try and grow further in different areas? If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
There's a real tension between that because on the one hand, I think it's the latter. It's actually we're growing anyway, we're doing pretty well anyway. Like a good example is, within the retail space, for example, in-store retail is still huge. Do you even need online retail? Therefore, do you need retail media, et cetera, et cetera? So on the one hand, just as an example, on the one hand, there's kind of that why fix what's not broken? But on the other hand, it's an incredibly innovation-led market and very dynamic.
Yeah.
And there's a real expectation just in terms of the way society operates there, the way the governments operate there, and obviously therefore the private sector as well, that you do innovate. It's an expectation of innovation. So there's this tension between the two things. On the one hand, saying innovation is everything. On the other hand, in some areas, I think actually the market's perhaps slower to innovate behind certain channels. And
would you expect that the innovation would then cause a greater growth than what you're currently seeing, or would the existing ad spend that's going into social and video, and arguably just video social, would that then be dispersed and go into other channels? Kind of what's that looking like?
The million-dollar question.
Yeah.
I think there's room for growth. I think there's room for more investment. I think there's room for take the social picture, like you said. I don't think you need to take money out of social. I think you do need to spend money in other channels.
Yeah.
And I think there's enough growth in the market to do that. There's population growth. There's obviously the middle class is growing within the region, particularly in markets like the UAE, for example. Traditionally been very expat-led market.
Yeah.
And people's perception of expat is they come and go. And therefore they're not a real market. But I think over the past number of years, that's changed. I think people are settling within places like the UAE, and they're settling for life. They're not expats. They are people who are living in those markets, and they are a viable audience for marketers. And I think that's a big shift in the way that perhaps the market's perceived from outside.
That's so interesting. And obviously the powers that be, they want innovation, they want to see new things. Who else is driving that change? Are brands wanting to try new things as well? Like,
Yeah, absolutely. I think they are. Brands, agencies, the agency ecosystem is very strong there. It's actually very successful. The platforms are innovating in their own right. And actually, like I say, even the governments, which typically you would say governments tend not to be innovative in that sense. Actually, the governments are very innovative and encourage that innovation. So I think that sort of created a market of, what's the next thing? How can we develop? How can we move forward? So it's very exciting to work in as a result.
It feels like it's a sort of bright and shiny new toy. Like there's lots of things to get excited about, and lots of people get excited about it. How does that then translate into practically getting things set up? Where does the IAB get involved with helping realise the opportunities that exist?
Yeah. Bright and shiny toy is a good example because it's double-edged sword, right?
Yeah,
On one hand, it's really
exactly.
exciting and great. And others but it's short term. And I think there's a tendency outside the market to see it as a very short-termist thing. And we see a lot of both talent and companies come into the market expecting it to be easy because there's so much growth, right? You just have to be there and you'll get some of this growth. But it's not easy. You need to build trust. You need to build, confidence in either you as a person or you as in a company, and it's a long-term process. So the companies and people that succeed are those that commit.
Yeah.
The ones that tend to have maybe a short-term blip and then fail are the ones that come in for the gold rush, so to speak.
Of course.
So I think it's about sort of maturing the perspective of the market to say, yes, it is exciting. Yes, it does have this crazy level of growth. But in order to capitalize on that, you do need to take a longer term view of it. Because it peaks and troughs, it's a relatively volatile market, as people know. So you've got to take the longer term view to say, okay, we're here for the long term. We're not here just for that one-off opportunity, that negative spend that's going to come from a specific client.
And what do you say to people that work in the MENA region? They might have MENA within their remit, but no matter where in the industry they sit, they could sit on a tech platform, they could sit agency side, but they don't sit in the region. What do you say to them about how their approach to working with the region? You've already said that people now looking in feel like it's sort of short-termist, it's kind of fleeting, shiny new toy. What do you say to them about how to best get the most out of working with the region without being there?
Wow, it's a hard question. I think in the same way as you would with France, Germany, Italy, right? You would be humble. You would understand that you don't have all the answers. You would understand that the market has its own nuances. It's not one homogenous market. The UAE is very different to Saudi, which is different to Qatar, which is different to Egypt, etc., etc. So understand that there are nuances between that. And I think I said humble, and I mean that like properly ask the right questions.
Yeah.
Like stop and think about why things are done the way they're doing.
Yeah.
Not you're doing it wrong, or here's a better way to do it. I mean, maybe there's a better way to do it, but sometimes there's a reason it's done in the way that it's done.
Yeah.
Because there are specific things about the way the market operates.
Yeah.
So take
the context and nuance.
Take time to understand it, like you would with any other market.
And what about kind of within the region itself? Where are you seeing the biggest opportunities right now? You're sitting here going, okay, so IAB MENA has been running for 5, coming into 6 years. We've seen huge amounts of opportunity in that time. What do you see as the next wave of, where the money can go, kind of where new technology can come into play, kind of where are you seeing some really exciting things?
So from our point of view, we're shifting our emphasis from kind of providing information on the market to actually setting the standards for the market. So working to actually create base level of expertise, if that makes any sense, or standards. So that's kind of our piece. I think from the market perspective, I think the one is to not see it as MENA, ironically, but to see it as, MENA is a catch-all of very individual markets that have their own opportunities and challenges, for that matter.
It's the same with the EMEA, right? It's actually meaningless, really. If you look at EMEA from it's so vast and every single market is so different. You have to take the time to delve into the different things.
So it's united by largely language and to some degree culture as well. So I think it's probably not as extreme as that, which is why the tendency, and in the old days you would buy TV across the whole region, it was easy to do, etc. But I think we are starting to see the need. Each of those markets are big enough in their own right. Yeah. To get the attention that they deserve in their own right.
Interesting.
So I think that's something that we're starting to see more of, and I think it's a big opportunity. I think within the channel space, I think things like CTV will catch on. It's relatively small currently, but it's growing like crazy. Things like retail media is a huge opportunity, and the data that comes out of that is a big opportunity. Things like programmatic out of home. It's a very out-of-home centric market, a huge spend behind out-of-home, very strong infrastructure and history. And only more recently, we've seen the shift towards digital out-of-home.
Right, great.
And programmatic, I think, is kind of the next the next thing. So I think that we'll see over the next year or two significant growth within the programmatic out-of-home space, which I think is a big opportunity for advertisers and agencies, whatever. So I think that's a big space there as well. And I think just shifting people away from the, dare I say, the lazy planning around social.
Yeah.
It's not to say social doesn't work, it does. It's very effective, but I think there is a tendency to maybe overinvest in that. Or perhaps a better way of wording it is underinvest in other areas.
Yeah.
So I think it's more about, how do we focus on those other areas? There's lots of consumers engaging in lots of content and lots of spaces, but the ad spend isn't maybe flowing. And that's partially, I think, due to it's harder, more complicated. There's more risks associated with it in some cases. Perhaps it's an education piece as well around that. So I think there's responsibility on the likes of the publishers to get their act together. There's responsibility on the likes of the agencies to help advertisers understand these opportunities. And you need a few brave advertisers who say, yeah, well, let's do this. Let's support that. Otherwise, there won't be an ecosystem.
No. That's so true. That's really true. And going back to, obviously you sit within a sort of a fairly unique position within the industry and within the region, atop the IAB, because you get to see all the different moving parts. It's a fascinating place to be. From a standards perspective, how is that being received? Because obviously standards are very important, and we've seen in other regions and other areas how beneficial and how fundamental standards are in kind of helping bring, standardisation across the industry, and in terms of measurement, in terms of data, in terms of just ways of working. But whenever a standard's first launched, it can be challenging because people have already had their ways of working and they struggle to kind of to get on board with it. How have you found bringing standards into the region?
Well, I think that's the opportunity of the newer channels like Retail Media, CTV, where there's less heritage, so there's less to change and more about what's the right thing to do going forward. So I think we'll focus on the newer ones.
Yeah.
Obviously it's a mixed bag. Some people are like, well, come up with your standards, but we do it this way, or our clients want it done that way. So some of that's education. But I personally believe they facilitate growth.
Yes.
They make it easier to spend. They put trust into the marketplace, which I think is really important. So I think we will see more and more move towards that kind of approach. And it's not policing it.
Yeah.
It's more just saying, these are the things that we think are best practices. This is the opportunity that it provides, and you can trust that you're going to get what you spend on, or whatever the case might be there. So I think that there's the positives outweigh the negatives, and I think people will see that.
And what for you is the one big message to the ad industry in MENA as to how to kind of really embrace what the future could hold? There's obviously a lot going on, and you've mentioned CTV, you've mentioned out of home, you've mentioned retail media. They are huge opportunities for the entire industry, and there's also things like AI coming into play, and kind of what that looks like. What's the message for the industry in terms of how to not feel like they're kind of rabbits in the headlights, and that's why they just go, it's just easier. It's far easier for me to put my mind to social. What's the message to kind of to brands, to agencies that are kind of leading the charge in terms of where the budget's going to get them to really embrace this and to really, I suppose, ask the right questions?
Look, I think the health of the ecosystem is paramount.
Yes.
Because without that, like I said earlier, there is no ecosystem. And as soon as you do that, you lose empowerment, and you're beholden to the seller of the inventory, effectively. And I think that maybe is an imbalance in power. So I think it's very important that there are opportunities across the board. And those opportunities will only happen if you work with publishers, for example, to say, hey, the reason we're not spending with you is X. Let's work together on that. Let's find a solution. And it can't just be about the price and trading and all these kind of things. It's got to be more about the performance of those channels, the trust and reliability of those channels, etc. And I think that's about working together, the collaboration piece, and that's where we can help. But actually, other industry bodies can also help to try and create that sense of, hey, we're actually all in this together. I might be buying or selling, but actually, if there's nothing to buy, I can't buy, and you can't sell. So we have to protect that. But equally, I don't think we should be forcing decisions that are not the right thing for either the consumer or the advertiser. That's not the right approach either. So it's
No.
about finding those solutions to, if it's a trust issue, well, let's address that. If it's an ad fraud issue, let's address that. If it's a measurement issue, let's address that. And you can only do that collaboratively.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you found that IAB being created in the region has actually kind of brought more trust and confidence into the region from global players that are looking to expand into new areas? Are you finding that actually the existence of an IAB just in and of itself has kind of helped kind of grow that?
Well, obviously, I'm going to say yes.
Of course you are. Well, it's a stupid question.
but actually, probably, yeah. Is the
Yeah.
the honest answer is I think it does. I think it does put the market into, okay, we are serious about this.
Yeah.
We're not going to just do what the rest of the world does, but we are at least aware of what the rest of the world's doing, and we're bringing those best practices where they are appropriate into the marketplace. Building a level of trust for both local players and global players. So we do have a lot of our members are players that have kind of touched the market, if that makes sense. Maybe they don't have people on the ground yet, and they join to engage and to understand, etc. And I think if you were to ask them, they would say actually it is a very useful tool to really engage with the market and actually try and bring their value into the market as well, right? It works both ways.
Definitely. Yeah. It brings new innovation into the market as well, and helps people kind of go, oh, that looks interesting, I want to give that a go.
Absolutely. And actually, it's good that you said that, because I wanted to make that point around the social piece, and it's not just social, it's all the big global platforms where people tend to kind of, are they the bad guys?
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Because they bring innovation, they bring investment, they bring talent, they help develop the talent in the marketplace, etc. So it's not actually as one way as some people would make you think. But there's still an opportunity in the non-platform piece.
That's so true. That's fascinating. That's all we've got time for, but thank you so much for coming in. It's been really good to chat to you, and it's so interesting to find out more about the region. And
Thank you for the coffee.
You're welcome. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you very much. And thank you for watching.